Awesome. So thank you everyone so much for being here. We have some incredible panelists with us this evening to discuss the Santa Maria ship logo and some of the activism that's happening right now in our city. First up, we have a couple of young leaders from Future Leaders of America. First up is Jacquelina Aguirre, or Yaki, who uses she, her, ella pronouns. She is 16 years old and will be a senior this year at Pioneer Valley High School. Jackie started with FLA in 2018, but sadly had to move states. But fortunately, last year, she came back from Washington and became the junior executive for the FLA Council, as well as the student rep for the Superintendent Student Advisory Council meetings. This year, she will now be the communications director of FLA. As time passed, she wanted to be more involved in her community and has recently finished phone banking to help our community get vaccinated, and now will be canvassing. In addition to her work with FLA, Jackie is also the social media ambassador for Transitions Mental Health Association, where they advocate the mental health services here in our county. She started to volunteer in anything she could, such as the vaccine clinics and panels, and plans on continuing to do so. She has a sister, a cousin, and a daughter, and wants to be a role model for her siblings and cousins and show them there are things outside of school that can be achieved by young folks. She enjoys traveling anywhere she can and loves art. Art is a way for her to express herself and to just let go. Jackie will be the first one in her family to graduate high school and hopes to go to a university. So welcome. Thank you so much for being here. We also have Lily Beth Ramirez, also from Future Leaders of America. Lily Beth is going to be a senior at Pioneer Valley High School. Her pronouns are she, her, and ella. She's going into her third year being on the FLA Youth Council, and she's been the secretary, the vice president, and currently the president. She's been involved with FLA since the summer of 2018 and has worked in various phone banking campaigns on topics such as vaccine equity and Proposition 15. In her 3 years with FLA, Lily Beth has been planning and hosting forums regarding education equity and has also been very involved in advocating for students in their conversations with Superintendent Garcia, working to align the A through G requirements. She has spoken out and attended many school board meetings. So welcome also to Lily Beth, and thank you for being here. Next up, we have some representatives from the Chiquillo Youth Group. First up, we have Dalia Garcia, who's an indigenous New-Savi Mixteca immigrant woman from San Juan Mixtepec, Oaxaca. She's the daughter of a single mother and the second of 4 children. Her mother, who had the determination to escape from the mistreatment of her father and the poor living conditions in Mexico, decided to immigrate to the United States when Dalia was 16 years old. Growing up in Santa Maria, California, an agricultural town with predominantly Latino hardworking class community, has taught her to get closer to her indigenous roots. The love and passion that she has for her Mixteca indigenous identity pushed her to get involved in the community to create safe and inclusive spaces for indigenous youth. In high school, she was the co-founder of the Colectivo Educativo de Estudiantes de Naciones Indígenas, the first indigenous youth collective in Santa Maria, and a volunteer for the Huela Guetaza organization. Today, she is the Chiquillo Youth Group Manager. Welcome, Dalia, and thank you for being here. Also, there's the pen's working. Next up, we have Leo Ortega, the Chiquillo Youth Organizer under Proyecto Mixteco Indígena. His pronouns are he, him, el. Leo is part of the New Savi community and comes from Santiago Tilapa, known as Itian Tu'un in his native language, and is an indigenous man residing in Santa Maria and used to be a farm worker as well. He is a college student attending Allen Hancock, pursuing an arts degree. Leo became part of Chiquillo and took the opportunity to be part of an organization that works with indigenous communities. He has experience working with youth as he founded an art collective group known as Chicano Renaissance, where he got the experience as a leader. He volunteered in many local organizations, such as Corazon del Pueblo, one of our awesome board members, as well as the UFW Foundation, Cause, and MyCop. This year, Leo is very excited to be part of MyCop Chiquillo team and work amongst his indigenous community, bringing knowledge, cultural art, and indigenous empowerment to the youth. He loves learning about his culture, the arts, and being outdoors. Welcome, Leo. Thanks for being here. And then finally, also from Chiquillo, we have Sofia Altamirano. Sofia uses she, her, ella pronouns. Her family is from Itiantun, Santiago, Tilapa, Oaxaca, and comes from a family of strawberry workers from the Nui Savi Mixteco community as a Tikio youth organizer in Santa Barbara County. So thank you, Sophia. Welcome. And then finally, we have Scott Fina, who has advocated for immigrant and farm worker rights and nuclear disarmament since moving to the Santa Maria Valley from Philadelphia 14 years ago. He has a PhD in political science and worked as an administrator in teaching preparation programs at 2 universities. He recently retired from his work in international development from the Congregation of the Mission, where he helped plan and fund human service projects in dozens of countries in Africa, Asia, Eastern Europe, Latin America, and the South Pacific. In our region, Scott has previously served on the board for People Self-Help Housing and the Orchid Children's Art Foundation, and has taught American government as a part-time faculty member at Allen Hancock College. He periodically gets into good trouble along with the members of the Beatude Catholic Worker House in Guadalupe. Welcome, Scott. Thank you for being here. Awesome. So all these folks on this panel have perspectives to share. So I'm really excited to hear from everyone. And the first thing we'll pose is, what does the current Santa Maria logo mean to you?
I can go ahead and go.
Awesome.
So I feel like, as many of you know, it's the Christopher Columbus logo, and it doesn't make sense because it doesn't represent the community. It isn't right to the Chumash people. It can be offensive, and it's also like, I feel like in a way the logo can be praising Christopher Columbus, who helped steal the land, and it just isn't right. And it doesn't represent our community, like I said before.
Next, what does the current Santa Maria logo mean to me? Well, obviously, Christopher Columbus is known for colonizing our indigenous communities here obviously in the land known as America, right? North America and South America, Central America, and the continent, right? And that ship is supposed to represent students in the district, right? And I feel like that's just like a misrepresentation of indigenous students who attend the school districts, and also our community as indigenous communities, like our native community, the Chumash, also the migrant community, indigenous communities here, like the Zapotecos, the Mixtecos, and etc. So that's my part about my concern.
I'm going to go ahead and speak. It's more of a question, really, is that I guess I don't understand why it was ever chosen as the logo for the city in the first place. I would like somebody to share if anybody knows the history of why that logo was chosen or when it was chosen. It doesn't make any sense to me in any way. It has nothing to do with our community in any way, shape, or form other than by the name of it. I mean, a name is a name. I mean, I just don't understand where they ever came up with it in the first place. We wouldn't even be having this conversation if it was a more logical, representation of who we are, and it doesn't represent us in any way. So if Scott or somebody has any idea, or maybe I'm jumping the gun here, but I'm like, I don't understand why it was ever picked in the first place. And I think if we had that information, maybe we can go from there as to the need to replace it.
Sure. So I think we can address that quickly just for sake of background, and then we'll continue with the panel questions. And Scott, it looks like you want to respond, but I definitely want to invite all of our panelists to chime in on this.
Okay. In response to Laura's question, the city adopted the logo in 1972, and the school district couldn't give me a clear answer. I don't think they know exactly, the folks who are there, but some of the senior staff said it was in existence already in the 1960s. I don't know why they adopted it, and Laura, everything you said, I completely agree with the illogic of it. I have the suspicion, I'm prejudiced, I'm sorry to say this, I'm partially Italian myself, but mayor and a couple of board council members were Italian at the time, and Italians love Columbus. A lot of them do. He's from Genoa. That's my suspicion. They said, oh, there's the name Santa Maria, pretty ship, but that's as far as I know.
Awesome. So thanks for clarifying that. And I think it's important to center, like, we can wonder about the exact intentions, but we definitely know what the impact is. Beyond, any individual making that decision, we know where this comes from, right? And so I'd love to continue on hearing folks' responses to what does the current Santa Maria logo mean to you?
If I could keep going, Alex, then I kind of wrote this sentence down. The image of Columbus's Santa Maria ship represents a false concept of discovery and heroism, and it's framed and maintained by what I think is a dominant but minority white culture in our region. Say it quickly, and I just want people to keep in mind the idea that an image or a picture can say 1,000 words, so it's very powerful.
Sophia, Dahlia, did one of you want to go next?
I can go next. I agree with Scott. I think, what I think of the definition that I take from the logo is just merely the remembrance of colonization, and I feel that that's the presence of that colonization, and we know what that means in history. Colonization is not something nicely of the connection of two worlds. It was a very violent history that we have here in the United States, and also around the whole American continent. As an indigenous immigrant person, it's just the remembrance of that history that we can leave behind. We still continue with that idea that it was a discovery, but in reality, it wasn't a discovery. It is, it was an invasion. We have that, and then I think that's one of the things that is. I agree with Scott when he says that the image speak. The images are powerful, and we try to romanticize this blurry history that we have and we carry. So, and also, well, and further, we're gonna go talk about the issues that brings and is a silent problem. But we can see what's the problem here. Well, that's my point. But
I agree. I agree with Dahlia had said. And in the chat, Laura said the image represents a false concept of the discovery. And yes, exactly. Thanks to Scott and Dahlia. I also agree with what she said, what Laura said, because we want it to be real. We want it to represent the community, and we wanted like, if people come and look at our logo, be like, oh, that's based on our community. We can't let it be based on something that isn't even true, and it's like not even true.
I think one of the things we have to kind of remember, because I've lived here since I was born, and the history of the ship itself was part of a big sculpture at the Bank of America on the corner of Broadway and Main, and it used to be part of First, it was the Bank of Italy, and then it became the Bank of America, and then it was taken down. And I think that symbol itself was how that came to be. It didn't have anything to do with Columbus. It didn't have anything to do with those things. It had more to do with the Bank of Italy was the predecessor of the Bank of America. And so they had the bank itself was beautiful. I mean, if you can find old pictures of it, and it had a ship logo on a ship part of the thing, just to represent, I guess, the Santa Maria. But I don't think it had anything to do with that. I think it was just part of the legends.
Right, and I think that's what what I'm hearing from a lot of the panelists is that those legends are built up, even if it's associated with a different entity like the Bank of Italy. We know where the name of the ship Santa Maria, and we know what that ship, especially in the context of a business like the Bank of Italy being in California, what imagery that's carrying. So I think that, it might be tempting for some folks to want to kind of pick apart the connection there. But what I've heard from all of our panelists thus far is, that clearly it represents Columbus specifically and colonialism broadly. And it's doing both things at once, especially when we put it on our official government and school buildings, beyond just the places we see it around town, right? And we don't just see it in that context. So other businesses have picked up that same logo. And so I just want to circle now to Sophia and make sure you have a chance to answer our prompt, which was, what does the current Santa Maria logo mean to you?
Yeah, thank you. I think for me, the Santa Maria logo, I think as how everyone has mentioned, has this history of colonization throughout history, but as well, I think it still represents the current presence of the racism and discriminations that are happening towards Indigenous and Native communities. And I think it's really important to have this conversation, because I feel many times Native and Indigenous communities are not acknowledged, even including Indigenous communities. I can say, I cannot speak for Native communities here, Chumash communities, but I can speak from my experience as an Indigenous woman and growing up here in Santa Maria and seeing the discrimination that happened towards our community, being, called names, for example, Indios, Oaxaquita, just other names. But I think the logo for me, it represents the current racism that's still happening in our communities. And yeah, I think that's what I have to share. Thank you.
Thank you for lifting that up and for sharing that. I think it's really important that we reflect on the impacts that this has. And it also, I think, really motivates our next question for all of our panelists, which is, why do you want to see the logo changed?
I could go ahead. Why I want to see the logo changed? Well, like I said, I wanted to represent our community. And if we get to change that logo, it would make it will show that we are willing to change, we are willing to change our views and everything. And if we get to change our views, then we could start ending that racism, like Sophia said, by just that step. It's like showing them we're willing to change. So that is why I want the logo to be changed into something that represents everyone, not only one race, something that unites us besides separating us.
I can go next. Let's see. Why do you want to see that? So I think it's important to change the logo, because I think that's the first step to acknowledging Native and Indigenous communities, as well as offering that respect. I think a lot of times the conversation is there's a lot of racism towards Native and Indigenous communities coming from, here in the United States from white people. But I think in Mexico, who are the people that are discriminating Indigenous communities in Mexico? And those are tends to be the Latinx communities. I think there's also having accountability from other communities and seeing the treatment of Indigenous and Native communities. And I think for me, it would be the first step to recognizing that and recognizing a lot of the trauma that as Native and Indigenous communities we've had experienced because of what one symbol represents. And also it also kind of, how do you say it, also continues kind of giving this false narrative of ourselves, saying that a lot of times they say that our communities are non-existent, or sometimes even within our own family, not recognizing ourselves as Indigenous people because of the humiliation and the discrimination we face, that we feel embarrassed to speak our native language. And I think for me particularly, just feeling proud as an Indigenous woman, I think that's something that just whatever I can do, I want to change the logo. But for me, it would be more than changing the logo. It would be talking about the ongoing conversations around Native and Indigenous communities.
So I can go now. So like everyone mentioned already, the logo doesn't represent the community, so it should really be changed. And it doesn't acknowledge all indigenous people who live here. Like it doesn't take them into account, since it is Christopher Columbus and it's like colonizer. And like Jackie mentioned the first time she spoke, she said that if people ever come to visit and they see it, they won't really know like what we're about. You know, they'll think that I guess you can see that we support it enough for it to be our logo, which we don't. So it's like really bad representation. And also, like Sophia mentioned, she said that it represents racism and everything like that. And there's like a lot of indigenous people here in the community, and that's just not something we want for it to represent.
Um, so I speak with the least authority of almost anybody here tonight. I'm a white man. I've been struggling to, take off all the privileges I have and all the layers of growing up, including Columbus discovered, the new world, and the ridiculous thing that he proved the world isn't flat and everything, blah, 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 and all the other aspects of my life that are difficult. I'm realizing I'm suppressed by institutions that have just drilled so much into me. I'm sure I'm representative of many, many white people and have so much to learn. And tonight is absolutely great. It feels like, when I first saw that ship, and I said to myself, and I saw it all over the place, if you go down 101, just from the beginning of the city boundary to the end, north to south, there are 19 images of that ship. That's one more or two more than one of Columbus's expedition he had. I think the second expedition he had 17. And it's on police badges, firemen's badges. It's on a garbage can in Pioneer Park, my closest city park from where I live. It goes on and on and on the library, It's almost like a cult. And it's almost frightening to me because it is so insensitive. And I don't know how successful we're going to be with the school district. I think we have a good chance. I don't know if we have any chance or not with city council, but just the discussion to get it out, to flesh it out. What I'm hearing from folks, especially of indigenous ethnicities, most white people don't even get or know. They're not even aware of the feelings and the insults and what that means. So.
Sharing that, Scott. I'm definitely learning a lot this evening and appreciate the conversation. About our remaining panelists, Dalia or Leo, did you want to tackle or give your thoughts to this question? Why do you want to see the logo changed?
For my part, I feel that the willing to change the logo, as other compañeros mentioned, is I think is the willingness to be open to listen and learn about what images can represent. I know that the Sarah McDonald give us a story that is not representing that story, but at the end of the day, we everyone doesn't know that type of stories when it comes to those images. As in indigenous communities, we carry that trauma of colonization and racism. And those images represent that and anything else. And why I want to see that change is because I think it's something that um, one of the things I always think is that in our community, you can't forget who is the majority in these communities. You have Santa Maria. Um, the majority of the population here are Latinx communities, right? And within the Latinx communities, I can say they're pretty sure 40% of that we're indigenous communities. So if you wanna talk about the community or the history of your community, you need to see the population you're talking about. And right now we are the majority. We are working here. The majority of the indigenous communities are the ones who maintain the economy, not just of this city, if not the whole state. You know, like if in all California, you're gonna see that the farm workers are the ones who are doing moving the economy here in this state. And I feel that that's something that people need to, all institutions need to be see that we are the majority and we are building and we are contributing more than we should. And changing the logo is just a merely act of respect for who we are in this community. And again, I agree with my compañeros that say that we can speak with for our brothers, sisters, and when it comes to the Native American um, communities. But we're talking about us as an indigenous immigrants that we share the similar um, history, that history of blood, and that's one of the things that institutions, the school needs to understand that the new generation doesn't have to carry that legacy of blood. The institutions, mostly in district school district, needs to be willing to change that and say that we don't have to carry that trauma, and they're willing to listen to us, and they're willing to open those spaces for us, and what and where we can learn the real history of this um, continent. And yeah, I feel that just that act of changing the logo is something that opened the space for us to be better as a community, and also face all the realities that, as Sophia mentioned, racism is not just between white and brown or black. As an indigenous woman, we also go through that within the same Latinx community, because we still suffer a lot of with those ideas of colonization and white supremacy, who is lighter, who is darker, and which one has more privilege than others. So uh, everyone carries that uh, responsibility that one way or another that there's still racism within the Latinx community as well. You know, how what when you say Latinx, you don't think about indigenous or indigenous women, indigenous youth. We think about maybe the mestizo idea that we have, or a lighter Mexican person. So yeah, it's just a comment. Thank you.
Thank you so much for lifting that up. So important. Leo, did you want to add your part?
Yeah, I could say a small portion of that, adding to what Dalia was saying. It's uh, like changing the logo isn't just like, it's gonna change everything, right? But it's like the first step to bringing up the topic of acknowledging the indigenous communities here and the native community here, and recognizing the trauma that, this image does bring to the table, right? Because recently I worked with the Chumash youth, and they share, like, they utterly share stories about that ship, and that ship represents colonizations and people across the ocean. So obviously we know that the Santa Maria ship, that's basically representing Santa Maria, right, is representing that image of, of colonization and separating certain, like, groups of people, because, like, they share beautiful poetry about, like, before the ship came, there were people like there was grasshopper people, there was rabbit people, there were dolphin people. But when the ship came, everybody was like no longer people. It was just different. And I don't know. I just really like carry that upon me because like, you know, like that ship represents, you know, it's just like it separates us from who, you know, from like it separates us from realizing what it truly means. So that's just my part.
Thank you so much, everybody. I want to make some time for questions from our audience. I know, Alberto, you've had your hand up a couple times. So if you wanted to ask a question of our panelists or other folks, if you wanted to direct a question to one or all of our panelists, feel free to raise a hand, put it in the chat, and I'll read it off for you, or go ahead and unmute yourself.
I guess I sort of wanted to ask the panel, as being members of a pan-Indigenous community living in Santa Maria, where there's a lot of people who, you know, own their own small businesses and who comprise, like some of you have said, that that work and make the economy roll. How would you guys like to see your our cultures as be visible and represented in this symbol or logo? With that in mind, that, you know, there's a pan-Indigenous community here, several people from whether, you know, this 40% of Latinx people, like was mentioned before, or Chumash, people who live here. I think we need to think about like which symbols will give visibility and representation to all who live here, and that also means, you know, the white people in our community as well. It's going to be an interesting thing to talk about, but I think as far as getting this like heard in the public space, and also for it to even be able to get brought up in discussion with the city, I think that's something that we should talk about, is like, you know, what is it that we need to see? What is it that we're going to represent in this community of pan-Indigenous and Black and Latinx and Chicanx, and a large spread of diversity in Santa Maria, the symbols, you know? I guess if that makes sense of a question, like what do we need to see? What would you like to see? Things to sort of like think about when we form an argument and present this to whichever board it is that's gonna hear this argument. And that's my question.
Well, something that I want to see would be unity, you know, not only Indigenous and Latinx, but like everyone, something that brings every culture and every race together. And unity would be a great way to show that everybody is equal and everybody will strive to come together and overcome all this like racism. And yeah, I hope to see unity in the logo.
I have a question that I was wondering if you think actually presenting an I don't want to say opposing logo, but presenting a logo to take its place might help move it forward. Like if you could say, this is something that we would like to replace it with, whether it would be just a suggestion, you know, like this is what, but I wonder if coming up with something different might help expedite it a little bit, to, or, you know, say here are 5 possibilities of something that more fairly represents what our community is, rather than just saying, take that one down, change that one, we don't like it, but to actually go ahead and take a step further by offering, you know, options that they could see. Oh, well, yeah, that, you know, that would represent this company, this community much better, you know, or something. I don't know. I'm just asking. I don't know. I know that's a long way away, but you know, maybe it's something that people will see it as less of a negative and more of a positive. That instead of we don't want to just stop something, but we have an actual option of here's some options that would be, as you know, that we feel are more inclusive.
Yeah, so that, I mean, that actually is going to be part of our program, is starting to talk, and Alberto is actually going to help us even think through generating some of those ideas. So we'll definitely get to that. Dahlia, you said you wanted a clarification on a question. Did you want to go back to the last question, or for this one?
Yeah, I was wondering about the Alberto question. I think
Yeah,
I got a little bit lost on that.
Yeah, so just Alberto, did you want to maybe ask the question again?
Yeah, I suppose the question was like, what would you like to see? I guess I sort of summarized what I gathered from, sorry, there's a motorcycle driving by my house. You hear that? What would you guys like to see after bundling up everything that y'all said? You know, I suppose I could ask this during the workshop, and or maybe we could get some more answers once we do that. But as which symbolism? I just sort of wanted us to get started on the idea generating, and you know, yeah, like which symbols would you like to see? Like what well, not just symbols, but what elements? And like,
Well, oh, sorry.
okay.
No, yeah, I think I was understanding that what is it the thing that I want to see besides the logo situation that represent more the community. I was thinking more of I got the question of the sense like maybe I'm expecting more accountability uh, for the institutions in general, medical schools, other institutions that help the community, that they need to do the homework about again what community they are serving. uh, we need more interpretations. It's something that we don't have to be asking, they have to offer something. Why? Because once again, if you see the numbers of your community, the majority, the ones who are need the services, government or for the public low income, we are the indigenous communities. So I think that's one of the things that institutions, the ones that carry money, they have the possibility. They need to do the work. They need to do the homework when it comes to helping their community. That's something that I want to see. That is something that we don't always have to be. That my people don't have to be scared to go to school for asking information about their children, and they don't have access to that because the school doesn't have interpretation, or even doctors, you know, simple questions about anything, a medical thing, they need to have bilingual access. um, so that's one of the things that I was thinking they change. But I and also maybe I just also want to bring the point that that has to be with the institutions. When it comes to community and when it comes to looking for the logo for the school, again, I think that those things, yes, we need to be part of that conversation, but let's do more digging. Where is the Native American community here right now? Where is they have to talk about that. What about the history before the banks here in Santa Maria? You know, we have the Shumas. Well, we don't have a native Shumas representing the whole Santa Maria, or maybe the Filipino that used to work here before long. Uh, you know, we got here. Why not the unity of native Filipino immigrant, indigenous immigrant? So you just that, you know. But when it comes to see what I would like to see from the institution is basically do the homework and now us as an indigenous community, we're not expecting much of other. We are trying to build our own basis and our tools, and that's the thing. That's the main thing, I guess. The bring the space for us, give us the spaces that we need to empower ourselves, because it's time. Thank you.
That was perfect. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate both of those responses. I think they fit so well together in terms of thinking about unity, but unity requires accountability, right? The multiple communities that have history here and acknowledging the current realities that we live in, right? I think is something that really came through. How do these histories affect our lives right now, right? The students who don't have interpretation that need it, the communities that are being underserved by our institutions, and connecting those dots, right? And seeing how important it is, right, to start from the top in terms of our symbolism, and also start from the bottom, right, in terms of our communities. And so I just really appreciated that, that bringing it all together so beautifully. So thank you for that. I will read off just a quick idea or suggestion from Lata Murti, and then I want to transition us into our more hands-on workshop portion. So Lata added in the chat an idea: what if our logo was a flag, a city flag? Could the city of Santa Maria, in partnership with Corazon del Pueblo, hold a contest or competition for designing a flag logo? No ships allowed. So definitely, I like the idea. We're going to go through a process, certainly, of replacing the logo, right, with something else. But I definitely also wanted to echo what Dolly was just saying, that certainly this longer conversation needs to be conducted in partnership with the Chumash representatives in order to reach that kind of accountability and unity that we have stated we want to see. So thank you so much to our panelists, especially for sharing your time, your wisdom with us, your remarks, and to everyone for the questions. I'll go ahead and stop our recording, and we'll switch into our more creative hands-on portion. So Alberto is going to lead us through this part. And I'll share some information in the chat for our website for the art that we'll be making or ideas that we'll be generating this evening. So take it away, Alberto.